Alright, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel, welcome back to my garage. We are back in the garage, the first time in the garage since Born Free, since the FXR Tour. I want to start off this video by just saying thank you to each and every one of you that watched the videos, thumbed them up, commented, subscribed, whatever you did, thank you so much. If you're new to the channel, this channel is more than just what you saw in those videos. We actually do work on stuff. We actually kind of play with motorcycles in more ways than one. In today's video, we are actually going to play with Milhouse's FXR. So if you watch those videos, if you checked them out, you saw this bike, rode it all the way up to St. Louis, did the whole loop, came back, and it's back in Little Rock now. So bike did great. A couple little issues. First, we're going to address the front end and add another brake. So just like I did on my FXRS, I went from a single brake to a dual brake setup. I just think that looks better. Obviously, it performs better and all that kind of stuff. But I mostly did it for the look. And second, this disclaimer, this video isn't to bring down any shops. This video isn't to bring down any of you guys at home building motorcycles. I am by no means an expert. I'm just a guy that does it for fun. But with that being said, I am not a shop. And therefore, the type of work and the type of product that I put out, I take a lot of pride in it for personal reasons, I guess you could say. Not for monetary reasons. I don't need a reputation to being some great bike builder or assembler or whatever you want to call me. This bike was built by a shop, and there's quite a few things that we need to address. I kind of found for Milhouse about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, the correct pulley that matches these wheels. We're going to get that on the bike. We're going to address this front end, and then we're also going to do a little surprise for Ryan that he does not know about, and that's upgrade to a set of My Machinist risers. How's this fool going to ride this bike, being good friends with Justin, and literally have none of Justin's products on this bike? So we are going to address that by putting a set of risers on there. He does not know about it. He'll learn about it at the same time that you guys learn about it. We're going to do a set of risers with a special little gauge cluster thing that you'll see later on in the video as well. So on this table, we got pretty much everything that we need to do the dual brakes other than the actual brake lines. So these legs are used, but this whole setup came from a good friend of ours, Alex Kirby, over in Shreveport, Louisiana. He's a big dyno guy, builds a lot of dynos, and he's actually kind of stepping into the FXR world. He's got a FXR that's pretty well built, and then he's got another one, a frame, and a bunch of parts he's been gathering for an RP build. Big thanks to Alex for letting us purchase these off of him. But these, as you can tell, these are the late model. These are the 2000 and up style legs. So they use a different caliber than what the traditional FXR would have used from the factory. These legs, from what we've been told, have already been outfitted with Race Tech internals. They're sealed. Everything's good to go. They're fresh. We shouldn't have to do anything with them. We also got a brand new PM brake caliber to match what he has on the left side. A matching rotor. This rotor came from V-Twin Manufacturing. This also, like I said, matches what's on the left side. This is just kind of an easy breezy AN style adapter for a narrow glide. This is what I use on my bike. You remember back in many videos ago when I was having problems with my front end, the brake lines. I bought one of these. It's sealed up great. It's not the most cool looking adapter, I would say, but it works. So once I get this on there, I'll be able to measure the rest of the brake lines, and then we'll be able to get those as well. We are going to be doing a set of 10-inch My Machinist risers. These are his round risers. These are not on the website. However, these are probably some of my favorite risers, and these are the exact same risers I'm going to be running on my twin cam bike. I don't know, I really love the look of them. They just have I don't know, they're just tough, and then, you know, if you do have gauges and other things, they easily can clamp and adjust onto the round tubes. And our boys over at Speed Dealer got them taken care of with a fresh set of grips. Front pegs, he doesn't have any rear pegs on there. He's going to go ahead and do the rear pegs eventually. They're just not on there now. We're going to hold off on these for the moment. He's going to try to maybe get some new shift arms and brake arm and stuff like that so these can screw into it. So he just has these. They'll just be sitting to the side. And yeah, so that's what we got. As far as like I was saying, when it comes to buying a bike, a few things you need to look out for. And not to discredit the shop, but what I'm trying to do is just educate you guys at home into things to look for and to know when you're building a bike, the things to pay attention to when you're trying to do something at home, because I don't want you, motorcycles are dangerous enough. And if you don't do something correctly, such as what's going on with this bike, it could lead to a possible, I mean, God forbid, you know, anything worse than just laying the bike over or something like that. But you get where I'm going with this. If you notice right here, I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but there's quite a big gap between the fender and the tire. a good sized gap. You can see daylight. This side, make its little DJ squeaking sound. Well, anyways, you get the picture. This tire is rubbing the fender, and I'm sure when we take this fender off, we're going to see a significant amount of rub there. Obviously, we need to cut a correct set of spacers for this, so that way this wheel is actually centered over. And when we do that, we're also going to have to space the brake calipers differently, because obviously when you shift the wheel over, it's going to be the brake calipers over. So I don't know if they ran it this way, because that's how the brake caliper lined up from the factory. But when you run in a Timken bearing wheel, which a Timken bearing is a non-sealed style bearing, you can just pop this little seal off and pop your bearing out and replace it, etc., etc. When you're running this style wheel, from what I've been told, the actual hub is narrower, and therefore it pulls your rotors in closer to the wheel. A sealed bearing wheel, the hub is wider and the rotor be further out. So I think they just adjusted this wheel to line up with the caliper, and didn't notice. They probably didn't have the fender on at the time when they did this, and when they put the fender on, no one noticed and paid attention that this was actually off. So the distance from the tire to this should be a lot shorter than the distance from the tire to this. So they should have seen that the tire was offset, but for whatever reason, this is how they sent it. And then of course, Ryan has been riding it now for a few thousand miles as such. Also, just some other little things to pay attention to, stuff like this. I mean, the wiring, that's kind of not nothing I would do. And like I said, I'm a nobody, but at the same time, I take a lot of pride in making sure that when I'm routing, you know, vent tubes, fuel tubes, when I'm routing wires, that I would route it a certain way. And then also one thing that we noticed on here, for some reason, they cut the original FXR key tab off the frame and put this aftermarket one on. I noticed looking at their Instagram that a few of their other bikes, they do the same style key on there. Well, Ryan's got a keychain, and unfortunately the keychain, because when you're riding, wind's blowing it, boom, 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 and it's actually eating into the paint. So little things like this to kind of pay attention to when you're assembling a bike is, I like to touch things. I like to make things move around. And is it going to make contact with stuff? You know, what is these parts going to do when the bike's actually going down the road? Had they had the key tab still here, and I don't know if a previous owner cut this off or if the shop cut it off while they were assembling the bike. I don't want to speculate, but when you do have the key here, you're able to hide this harness a little better, because this, not a pretty look as well. And there's other little things that we can go through this bike and showcase for you guys, but that's the big thing, is just wiring. I'm a big stickler for wiring. I want wiring to be nice and clean, and this looks not clean. What we're going to do in today's video, we're going to go ahead and pull this front end off. Actually, we're going to pull the fender off, the brace, get that wheel off, because we need to get Justin to machine this hub to accept that brake rotor. And then we're going to start mocking everything up. I need to figure out the measurement here for the spacers. We're going to head over to Andy's shop. We're going to get those spacers cut, and then hopefully either today or tomorrow we'll get the wheel back on, get the brakes on so I can measure for the brake lines, and then, you know, just keep working our way through it. But overall, it's a beautiful bike. Don't get me wrong. I am not, I say this again, I am not putting down the shop that built this bike. I'm just picking out things that hopefully this helps them as well as helps you to pay attention to when you're assembling your very own custom bike at your house. So yeah, let's set up the time lapse. Let's get this front end apart. Let's kind of play with some shimming on this front wheel, and then we'll pick it back up and see what we figured out. So off camera, I kind of played with the front axle to see kind of what was going on here as far as the space and everything goes. Now, what you have up here, this is a stock FXR, 39 mils, so it'll be a stock FXR, early Dyna, early Sportster. This is the axle that's supposed to be in it. This was the axle that was inside the bike. And if I take the spacer back, as you can see, just looking right there, if I center them up, the ends are pretty much at the same length. And if I come down here, you see where the spacing is for where this makes contact with the either spacer or bearing or whatever this first makes contact with. It's a lot shallower on this one than on the correct FXR. Also on the FXR, the first spacer, or your right side spacer, is only that thick. So when you combine this with that, it gives you a certain length. The bike had this spacer, even though this is shorter, this spacer is almost twice the width of that, which was pushing the wheel further this way. Then it had this spacer on the other side. So basically what I did, put the correct spacer in there with the correct inner spacer, and then I took this spacer and I started playing with these shims. Now these shims, believe it or not, came with my Race Tech stuff. So these are like Race Tech style shims, but they're the exact 3/4 inside diameter. And then they got, you know, a nice little thickness to them. So I found out that this distance with this setup was the correct. So then I took it, I measured it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Andy at Howland Cycles, and we're going to cut a spacer. I have an old Softail rear spacer that is the same outside diameter, inside diameter as this, but it's about twice as long. We're going to cut that down. We're going to chuck it up in the lathe, and we're going to cut it down to the measurement that I got with these washers and this spacer. And that's going to put our front wheel right back to where it's supposed to go. They are taking this whole bike all the way down and repower coating the frame. There's the frame is clean on this side, but something about over here, I don't know if some type of chemical got on it, but right here, it looks like it's been rattle canned, and they got a new motor for it, and they're doing a 6-speed in it. Milhouse wants to take this whole thing apart, clean the wiring up, and repower coat the frame. So I'm not gonna worry about this fallout, even though it's super, super loose. I mean, this thing is just flopping back and forth. They'll just have to set all this stuff when they assemble the bike. One thing we are gonna do is I'm gonna rob these extensions out of here. So we are gonna add these into the new setup. The new front end without these is pretty much exactly the length of what this setup is currently, and he wants to go even taller. So we're gonna add this, kind of like a quick little fix, just see what happens. I might try to take these off real quick so I can take them to Andy's while I'm at Andy's and polish them. Yeah, let's get loaded up and let's head over to Andy's shop. All right, everybody, it's the next day, and kind of off camera, I did put the front end on this bike. I did add the 2-inch extensions from the old legs. While I was at Andy's, I did polish them up. They kind of blend in a little better. They look a little nicer. Obviously, ideal situation would be to go ahead and put a new set of tubes in here that are the correct length, but this does work as well. But either way, I did get the front end kind of on here, and I mocked it up with a spoked front wheel that I had laying around. This is actually off of my 87, which if anybody needs it, I'll sell it. I got it mocked up with the spacer that you saw that we had cut over at Andy's shop, so that way I could get the spacing for the calipers, because now the calipers need to sit a little bit more inward, and I needed to kind of get the measurement for that. So I did get the hub, just the hub assembly. These are, I don't want to call them a 3-piece wheel. Basically, it's a 1-piece wheel, but the hubs are interchangeable. So I took the half hub and the rotor that we have over to Justin's, drill it, tap it, all that sort of stuff, and we can reinstall this with the brake rotor and have an official dual brake front wheel. So hopefully later today, I'll be able to pick that up. Like I said earlier, we were able to source a factory, not a factory, but a genuine custom chrome matching pulley for the wheels. And of course, Rick polished it for us, so those look great. And as a surprise, we're adding a set of Justin's risers to this mix, but not just risers. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Justin made a one-off gauge pod setup, if you will, for this GPS speedometer that was in the bike. So this was actually on the bike where the factory fuel gauge went. So Ryan had no actual fuel gauge, but he did have his speedo. It does track the mileage, all that sort of stuff. The gauge is kind of odd in the sense of it's got like a plastic cap on the back that screws in. So Justin kind of designed something to where it screws in all together. There is a GPS wire that goes through this hole. This is obviously your main harness. And then there's also for your trip and everything, the buttons down below. Let's get the camera set up. We're gonna get this rear pulley off, get the new pulley on, tackle the risers and that gauge pod. And then hopefully the wheel hub will come back from Justin, and we'll be able to put that on and kind of button this bike up. I don't know, we'll see. But anyways, let's get you on a time lapse. Here we go. Alright, I had to change real quick out of the long sleeve and the sweatpants. So we got the rear wheel on, torqued, and man, that pulley looks so much better than the factory pulley. By the way, this is a Providence Cycle. I don't know if you guys follow that shop. Xavier there builds some incredible bikes. Does a lot of choppers, but he's made a few FXRs. And this is actually his FXR swing arm that he offers. What's really cool about this piece, not just the billet aluminum, but all the stainless little pieces. The shock mounts right here, kind of like the factory style, so it doesn't really change any of the geometry or anything, but it is a little bit longer, just like Justin does. You got a lot more adjustability here. So when they tear this bike down and build it back up, Ryan is gonna buy a longer belt to bring this wheel further back and still keep the 70 tooth on there. And he's got plenty of adjustment to do so. So great swing arm, Xavier. I love it. It does need to get a fresh polish and ceramic coated after that. Man, it does look great. One more issue real quick that I'm gonna showcase, and another one that I ran into was the rear spacer. So when I went to go take the rear wheel off to put that pulley on, this spacer, as you know, this thick part should ride inside the seal, and then this little thin part would go up against the swing arm, which is way too thin to do so. They actually had it the other way around, not to mention it's shorter. So for comparison, this is a one-piece axle spacer for an FXR made by FXR Forever. Zach out there in California makes this quality product, and it's the, you know, swing arm saver, if you will, plenty of beef that goes on the swing arm side, and the correct diameter that goes inside your seal on your wheel, and then it's just one piece. You can see how much shorter this is, and what this was causing you to actually, when you go to torque the wheel down, it was actually pulling the swing arm in. Ryan was complaining that the bike had a little wobble, when with the front wheel being off center with the wrong spacers and the rear wheel having the wrong spacers, I'm sure the geometry on that bike was all messed up, and hopefully we got them dialed back in. I had a set of stock FXR spacers, the two-piece style, so I did put those in there for him. It's just, please be aware of things like that. Like, axle spacing and everything should be, if you're going to be a custom bike builder, I'm not a custom bike builder. I'm just a guy in my garage doing mechanics, and I'm finding these issues. Just take your time. Just take your time, do it right. It's going to pay off in the long run, especially if you got a company or a shop that you want to go the distance. Reputation is everything in this industry. The internet makes it real easy for something bad to spread, if that makes sense. Rear wheel's on, the brakes all adjusted, everything's good to go in there. Now we're gonna get to the front end. Let's get those risers swapped out. What you do is we need to go ahead and take the bars off. I've protected the tank. Disconnect the clamp and just roll the bars back onto the gas tank here. Let them sit there. Yeah, we'll take the 2 bolts off the bottom. And for whatever reason, whoever did the framework on this thing before cut the actual stop off for the front neck. So I'm hoping Ryan and them weld another one on there, because I don't like this thing going as far over. If it ever gets into a wreck, unfortunately, hopefully it never does, but if it does, it won't take much more for it to break that little tab off and kick the wheel even more so, causing more significant damage and so forth and so on. So anyways, let's get these 2 Allens off the bottom and get these off. Don't use these. I don't even know what brand this is. Don't use these. Obviously this thing was stripped. It's all rusted. I had to chisel it off. It's so thin that the other one, as I was taking this off, You see how it's like kind of dished in a little bit? It's because it's pulling the center of this. And it's only a matter of time before it actually breaks that top part. Stupid. I don't know what brand these are. I don't know, but they're going in the trash. Don't use these. Now I'm not using Loctite on these, mainly because they're coming right back off. Like I said, he's going to take this whole bike apart. But there are lock washers on there, there weren't lock washers before, but there's lock washers now, so. Boom. Man, that looks so much better with the straight risers. I love these risers. And like I said, this is pretty much the same setup I'm gonna be running on my twin cam swap bike, except I'm gonna go with the Speed King bars. Their high bends are in between the thrash and mids and highs. I think the thrash and highs are 5.5, their mids are 3.5, and the Speed King's highs are 4.5. So it'll be just a little taller than this setup, but I love it. You see how the hand grip positions just a little laid back, and then he can fine tune it in the way he likes it. So let's get that gauge perch mount on there, kind of get the gauge centered up, and keep moving forward. Also, another little tech tip: if you're going to use zip ties, don't use the big ones. Buy some small ones. I'm going to clip all these off and use the small ones. I mean, I'm not a big zip tie guy. Obviously, you know, you want things secured and out of the way, but the big ones look tacky. If you're going to use them, use the small ones. If you're getting these adapters from Justin, these holes that he puts in it, it's actually for the wires. So when you mount this on here, this harness will go through this and actually hold the harness, so it makes it look a lot cleaner. And we'll actually be able to do away with the center zip tie. I'm going to set the camera up because it's hard to do it with one hand, but I'm going to get this thing mounted on there. We'll get the gauge temp installed, put the dash back on, and let you see how it all looks together. Barrel kind of nut for the throttle sleeve here, and then a 10mm jam nut. There's no way. I mean, I can't get a 3/8 on there, and a 7/16 was too big, but a 10mm fits perfect. I don't know what kind of junk this is, where you got to have a metric wrench to do throttle cable adjustments on a 1986 Harley-Davidson FXR. So this bike has been updated with the 1996 and up Harley-Davidson controls. It's kind of a pretty common upgrade that a lot of folks will do. One grip down. So like I said, we're replacing these with a setup from Speed Dealer. These are some of his billet knurl polish. I think he does this with like an anodizing, different colors, things like that. Really nice piece. Justin runs these on his bike. He really enjoys them. And yeah, just slide them in. It's got this little rubber ring on there. That's kind of cool. And then we'll start evenly kind of pulling our play out of there before we tighten anything up. Now, as far as everybody's got their own preference on like what they like for kind of their play and their throttle. I personally like just a little. That way you know you're not going to hang up your throttle, but then you get full movement right there. That's good. This one's a little more straightforward. You just put it on. It's got a couple little set screws. So we got this back from Justin. Like I said, he was able to drill and tap the 5 holes for the actual brake rotor itself. And we're going to place this on there. We're going to coat the bolts that I've also cleaned. A little bit of red Loctite. And we're going to torque all these down. Get this wheel on the bike with its new second brake rotor. All right, front wheel's on. I think we're done. I think the video can end here because we're still waiting on brake lines, waiting on a few other things. And I also started pulling apart the rear shocks because I want to get nicer hardware for the lift block and the shocks themselves. We got the brake on. It lines my line up right here. Another thing you can do is they do make hub spacers that could space your rotor out this way, or you can just do, you know, a nice little spacer there. So basically, anytime you're spacing caliber, the most calibers are halves, so that way you can rebuild them. You know, you got your pistons and everything in there. That seam is dead middle where your cutout is, and you want that seam to be right in the middle of your rotor itself. We got it on there. Everything looks good. Freshy PM, brake rotor, everything's nice. I am having a couple little issues. There is a little clunking in the front end, and I think the bearings, either they're not shimmed properly, or maybe we have a bearing that's on its way out. So I'm gonna pull this wheel back off. I'm gonna take it to Andy, let him take a look at it, see what he thinks. Oh yeah, and I didn't show you guys the finished product up here with the nice gauge. Give this thing a little key on. It takes, I think it's like 30 seconds or so for this to go through its little cycle, but you kind of see what's going on here. It's got the neutral light. It does tell you your speed, and I think the bike's got 20-something hundred miles. And like I said, the trip button still works for him to adjust his trip. So everything's on there. The new speed dealer grips, speed dealer pegs. Another big issue for this bike is it literally leaks out of every orifice. If you're going to build a full bike and the motor's out of the frame, please just replace the gaskets or seals or whatever. Output shaft is leaking back here pretty bad. I'm thinking it's leaking somewhere up here, maybe this O-ring that goes between your inner and outer. Primary pretty bad. The motor side is leaking pretty bad. I mean, the only thing that's not leaking on here is the rocker boxes and the base gaskets, which is a good thing, but I'm constantly cleaning oil up underneath this bike. It is what it is. And you saw in the video when it was sitting at Kyle's shop that there was quite a bit of oil underneath it. So for a bike that was built 2,000 miles ago and had the motor out of it, there's kind of really no reason not to go ahead and replace some seals and gaskets and things like that. We have dual brakes. We got a special little gift from your good friend Justin there, Ryan. Hope you enjoy that. Yeah, you see it right there. So 2013 miles. Let's get this video out for you guys to see, and then I'm gonna fix a few more things on this bike, get the fender on, get the fork brace on, and we'll be good to go. Bada bing. Get ready for some Hudson updates. Justin has got that bike getting there. Bear with him on the video though, because he's kind of working on that bike in between cutting parts and everything. So he doesn't have a full day dedicated to just working on that bike. So the videos will be kind of cutting, you know, pace and piece together and everything. But you guys will get an idea of what's going on, and that bike is going to be amazing when it's done. I'm gonna turn this key off before the battery dies, and we'll see you on the next one. Y'all take care. Peace.